You probably already knew that depending on the element of the dragon you're fighting, that dragon has a special attack, but what you probably didn't know is that for the Chemtech dragon, its special ability is that it gains an insane amount of attack speed as it gets lower on health. This isn't just a fun piece of trivia either. The Chemtech dragon literally triples its damage output when it gets low on health. Just look at the attack speed that this thing has right now at full health. Now compare that to what its attack speed looks like now that it's low. This one mechanic makes the Chemtech dragon by far the hardest dragon to take early, especially solo, so make sure to factor that in and always make sure to burst the dragon at the end so you don't spend too much time tanking it, because this dragon is insanely overpowered. Another interesting thing that not many people make use of is the combination of the rune Cosmic Insight with the item Lucidity Boots. Both of these are ways to reduce the cooldown of your summoner spells, and when paired together, the reductions can be massive. Flash has a base cooldown of 300 seconds, which is 5 minutes. With Cosmic Insight, you can reduce the cooldown to be only 4 minutes and 15 seconds instead. Then with Lucidity Boots on top, your flash goes as low as 3 minutes and 44 seconds. This makes it so that you can have as much as a 1 minute and 16 second lower flash cooldown than that of your opponent, which is incredibly important on flash-reliant engaged champions like Diana, but most notably on engaged supports like Rel and Alistar. Very commonly, what I used to do in the pro leagues is opt to take this combination of Cosmic Insight and Lucidity Boots into enemy team compositions with a lot of immobile carries, who I could leverage my lower flash cooldown against. In the first fight, you simply trade flashes with your opponent by engaging onto them, and then take note of their flash cooldown. A couple minutes later, when my flash comes back up, I'm left with a window of over 1 minute where I now have a flash advantage over an immobile carry. To see even more why this is useful, all you have to do is look at the respawn timer of a dragon. A dragon respawns 5 minutes after it's killed, and a flash cooldown is 5 minutes long. Meaning if you trade flashes with an enemy carry during a dragon contest, your flash will come up before the next dragon, but theirs will still be on cooldown for the majority of the contest, meaning you either get a guaranteed teamfight win against a flashless immobile carry that you can easily dive, or the enemy team is just forced to concede the dragon against you, all because you took a rune and an item that just lowered the cooldown of your flash. Now this was just 2 of the completely random facts and tips that I have to share for you in this video, where I'm going to keep on going until I run out of extremely cool things to tell you about, and when I finally do, I'll stop making the video, and then give it a title based on the video's current duration, and post it for you guys to enjoy. Now making these videos takes a ton of effort on my part, which is why I need to say a big thank you to the people over at Eldorado GG for sponsoring this video. Eldorado is an online marketplace where all of the sellers have already been verified and are trusted, giving you guaranteed protection against scammers. On it, you can purchase digital items and in-game currencies for the cheapest rate on the market that you'll find for all of your favorite games, including League of Legends of course, where you can stock up on RP, skins, Hextech chests, and even more, all on a digital marketplace you know you can trust. There's a huge focus put on being as user-friendly as possible as well, with an easy-to-navigate website and guaranteed delivery times listed on every product that you can see before you complete your transaction. Eldorado is already trusted by thousands of people, with them having over 49,000 ratings at an average of 4.4 stars out of 5 over on Trustpilot. And in the extremely rare situation where something does go wrong with your order, there's a 24/7 live support chat that you can access at any time, as well as a money-back guarantee, so you know you'll either receive your order or get a full refund. They've even given me an exclusive discount code that you can use for 5% off on your purchase, so head on down to the link at the top of the video description, or use the code ROGUE at checkout in order to get 5% off your purchase price.
My name's Rogue and I played League of Legends professionally for 7 years. Now I'm a full-time content creator and coach for all ranks, Iron through to Challenger. So if you want more information of what a coaching session with me will look like, you can find more information by following the link in the video description below.
Let's start the video off with the rapid fire round. Firstly, Redemption is actually invisible to enemies if they don't have vision of the center point of where the item was cast, meaning that Redemption, when used slightly inside of a wall or inside of a bush where the enemy doesn't have vision, is literally invisible to them despite the fact that they are standing in it. You guys all know about the famous flash bait, right? Where you walk up to a wall, but you actually flash into the bush next to the wall, baiting your opponent to chase you the wrong way. Well, I have the counter to that. If you right-click your opponent and just take your hands off the keyboard, your champion will follow them, even if you lose vision. Here, when the enemy flash jukes by flashing into the bush next to me, my champion just knows where to go. Then, the next time around where they really flash into the Baron pit, my champion follows them that way instead. In fact, my champion continues to follow them for a really long time, despite the fact that I lose vision of them several times. At this point, I literally haven't touched my mouse in about 15 seconds. I tested this to see if it would go forever. Thankfully it doesn't. It seems as a set range that once the enemies get far enough away or you lose vision for too long, your character will just give up, stand still, and stop playing with map packs. Thank God. Now you clicked on this video to see something random. Well, let's live up to that title. Now normally minions walking out of base are ghosted, which means that they don't have collision with champions, and so you can't run into them in order to manipulate where they go. But this ghost doesn't apply to champion-made walls. Therefore on Ornn, you can start Q and use it like this on the first wave as it comes out of base. By using your inhibitor as a wall, you can spawn a wall behind the frontmost minion that will block the other minions behind it, creating a small gap between them. This can then be repeated another 2 times by spawning a wall next to each tower as you run towards lane with your wave, which just increases the gap between the frontmost minion and the others by even more. But what's the point of doing this exactly? By splitting up the frontmost minion from the rest of the wave, it causes that frontmost minion to arrive earlier than the others, thus getting focused down quickly before its friends can show up, which creates a slow push that pushes back into you. This is a great way to ensure that you have a safe lane state anytime you look over and see one of those disgusting ranged top lane players. By doing this, you speed up the rate at which the wave pushes into you, which means that you lose less minions as the wave slow pushes in, and more minions end up crashing into your tower for you to collect onto tower, saving you some early last hits. The same thing can be done but much more easily by playing Anivia. Anivia has an incredibly weak level 1, but by doing this you can ensure that you have a safe wave state on your side of the lane for at least the first 3 levels or so of the laning phase, making it genuinely viable to play Anivia top lane. Pro teams have actually made use of this trick recently in official matches, so it's not just a gimmick. In the Korean Pro League, a team picked Anivia top and used it for a lane swap. By walling the wave level 1 as it came to lane, the Anivia could ensure a safe wave state for the first few levels in an expected 2v1 lane, and eventually, if the enemy did try to tower dive her, she would just have her passive, the egg, which somehow makes Anivia one of the best top laners in the game to have in a 2v1 lane swap scenario. On Neeko, most people know by now the trick of switching to become a cannon minion in order to tank more tower shots since you adopt the reduced tower damage buff the cannon minions have. This one has been used countless times in pro play over the years to execute dives cleanly, but she's also got a few more less utilized mechanics. Normally when Yasuo takes damage, his passive will proc shielding him and blocking the damage he takes, but if Neeko turns into a minion while her spell is mid-air, it won't proc Yasuo's shield and the damage will go through it. What's even more useful is the fact that this poke doesn't proc any of Yasuo's defensive items or runes either. Here when I proc the Yasuo, it procs the healing from his Doran shield and his second wind, although the second wind doesn't show up here. But in the second example, where I turn into a minion while the spell is mid-air, you can see the Doran shield passive doesn't proc. Assumably, the second wind also doesn't proc, making it that poking in lane far more lethal if you switch to become a minion before your spells hits, as it doesn't proc the healing from these items and runes. As a final note as well, Neeko can dodge runes from hitting her. Here I swap to become a minion when the Anivia's E hits me. As a result, she doesn't proc her Arcane Comet or her Mana Flow Band, even though she hit a spell, because those runes only proc when you damage a champion. And I'm not a champion, I'm a minion. Here Blue Team's getting ready to take the Rift Herald together. We have our top laner Mundo, our support Blitzcrank, and our jungler Kayn is on the way. My question for you is, who do you think should be the one to tank the Herald's auto attacks? Did you say Dr. Mundo because he's playing a tank? Well, if you did, you'd be wrong. Rift Herald's auto attacks deal bonus damage equal to a percentage of a champion's current health, meaning that its attacks deal more damage to champions who have a lot of health. Mundo has almost 4,000 health at this point, while Kayn only has 1,700 health, meaning that the bonus 4% damage that the Herald's auto attacks would deal 160 extra damage against Mundo, but the same 4% bonus increase would only deal 78 damage to Kayn, meaning that Mundo takes over double the damage that his jungler does if he was to be the one tanking Herald. For this reason, it's actually better to have squishy champions tank the Rift Herald as opposed to having a tank do it, but it's not that clear cut though. This 4% current health bonus damage applies in the form of physical damage, meaning it is reduced by armor. So if your tank has a lot of armor, it might actually be worth having them tank the Herald still, even if they have more max health. You just have to do the math though. But what's a sure thing is that for low armor, health stacking champions like Cho'Gath, Scion, and as we just saw, Dr. Mundo, it's probably wise to leave the Herald tanking up to someone else who's a little squishier on your team, if you can convince them to do that. Good luck. Junglers actually receive less XP from lane minions dying compared to their laners as a result of their jungle item and a hidden passive it has. At the beginning of the game, this starts off with them receiving 70% less XP from lane minions dying, but this amount slowly starts to scale down over the first 20 minutes of the game, until finally after 20 minutes have passed, they will then receive the full XP from lane minions, just like everyone else. For this reason, junglers in the early game should obviously focus on just taking jungle camps and should only push lanes in the situation where they have to fix bad lane states. But once 20 minutes rolls around, you should now prioritize pushing waves over taking jungle camps in almost any situation where your teammates can't push the waves themselves. Killing jungle camps will not win you a game of League of Legends, but pushing waves into towers, that will. This season, Riot made a change that I honestly think is pretty cool. Nexus towers now respawn a couple minutes after they're killed, which leads to some pretty strange strategy that I've never seen talked about before. If you ace the enemy team and try to push down their base looking to deal some damage, it's not really worth sticking around to take Nexus towers anymore if you know that you won't be able to take the Nexus itself. Not only do Nexus towers now respawn, but they also give you 0 gold for taking them. Here is a map that I used in a previous video that shows the gold rewards given for killing each tower on the map, and as you'll note, killing Nexus towers doesn't give you anything. And now that they respawn, that means that there is literally no upside in risking overstaying to try and finish off Nexus towers if you can't end the game. What you should do instead is damage the tower and leave it alive on low HP. If the tower dies, it will respawn a few minutes later at full health. But if you put the tower low on health, it'll make it easier for you to end the game later in the future when you come back for that final push. Nexus towers do regenerate health, but it's really slow, only at the rate of about 300 health per minute. Another thing to note is that when a tower is killed, it cannot regenerate all of its health. If a tower is reduced to below 1000 health, for example, it will regenerate up slowly to 1000 health and then will stop there. But if the tower is outright killed, it will respawn at its max health, which is 3000. Meaning in modern day League, if you can't end the game, don't bother taking the Nexus towers. Get them down to a couple hundred health, back off, and then come back later to finish the job. Alright, remember how earlier in the video I explained that minions are ghosted as they walk to lane, so you can't walk into them to block them? Well, people on my Discord broke this as well. Whilst you can't walk into minions in order to block them, what you can do is stand in the spot where they spawn. In the code, minions are first spawned and then the ghost effect is applied to them afterwards, but for a very brief moment as they appear, they don't yet have the ghost effect and are subject to champion collision. By doing what this Scion is doing right now, you can make the frontmost minion arrive to lane slightly quicker than the rest of the wave, just like we saw done earlier with our Ornn and Anivia example, giving us yet another way to abuse how the minion waves move in the early game. By doing this, you can just reliably set up the wave to slow push into you if that's what you want to happen. Now I think it's time for another one of those rapid fire rounds. If an enemy has the item Frozen Heart, you can see when the enemy is nearby as the Frozen Heart debuff will apply to your status effects even if you don't have vision of the enemy who is applying it to you. Nocturne's ultimate is really annoying, but it can be blocked by spell shields and removed by the item Quicksilver Sash, which is really useful for champions with global ultimates like Galio and Shen. By using Quicksilver Sash, you can find which teammate is getting ultied by the Nocturne, and then you can ult in response to that now that you have vision of them and you can save your teammate. Selling Doran's items in League is giga griefing and should only be done in late game situations where you want to finish a completed item. Almost every item in the game sells for 70% of its purchase price, but Doran's items sell for only 40% of their purchase price. Not only this, but the stat efficiency of Doran's items is absolutely bonkers. The amount of stats you gain compared to the price you paid for those stats for a Doran's Blade is 161% efficiency, meaning you get far more health, attack damage, and lifesteal compared to the price you paid for it. You buy a Doran's Blade for 450 gold, but the stats of a Doran's Blade are worth 725 gold. As already mentioned, when you sell the Doran's Blade, you only get back 40% of what you paid, meaning you only receive 180 gold. Comparing the value of the stats that the item has compared to what you get from selling the gold means that by selling a Doran's Blade, you are effectively losing 545 gold worth of power anytime you sell your Doran's item. So PSA, do not sell your Doran's unless you're buying something really important, like an Infinity Edge. Otherwise, you're practically lighting money on fire and griefing the game. To finish off, I got a weird one. Normally when versing a champion with lifesteal or omnivamp like Warwick or Aatrox, you will generally think that the best form of healing cut to buy is something like an Executioner's Calling, which is true. This item does the job, but there is a hidden healing cut item that you have never thought about before. Death Stance. Death Stance passive causes 30% of the damage that you take to instead be dealt as true damage over the next 3 seconds, which effectively reduces the amount of lifesteal and omnivamp that your opponent will heal for. Say an enemy has 10% lifesteal and they attack you dealing 100 damage. They will then heal for 10 health, as that is 10% of the damage they dealt. But if you have Death Stance, you don't take 100 damage. You take 70 damage, and you then take a further 30% damage over 3 seconds as a result of your Death Stance. So now when the enemy attacks you, they will only receive health back equal to 10% of the 70 damage they initially dealt, making it so that instead of healing for 10 health, they will instead heal for 7. Now, I'm not entirely sure if the enemy actually does receive the lifesteal of the 30% damage over time of Death Stance passive or not. I'm pretty sure that building Death Stance does literally cut out this lifesteal entirely, as the damage comes from the item, not the enemy champion. Someone will have to test this further, but either way it doesn't really matter, because in a worst case scenario where they do still receive the healing is delayed, which at a minimum gives you time to burst an opponent down before they receive that portion of their lifesteal, and in a best case scenario, if you manage to get a kill, it will remove the damage of a time portion that you take entirely, which, if the enemy does lifesteal from it, would just remove the lifestealing that they get. But as I said, I'm pretty sure that this item just straight up makes it so they heal for 30% less with lifesteal and omnivamp as a result of you buying this item. Now, I hope you enjoyed the video, because man, I enjoyed making it, and I learned a lot from this as well. And a huge thank you to Eldorado for sponsoring this video. Remember to check out their link at the top of the video description and to use code ROGUE at checkout for 5% off on your order.